part of a generation of tools that's really built to make cybersecurity easier. I really need to figure out how to get those green room dances on the screen. I get to watch all this stuff that no one ever sees.
I know he's watching, so it's gonna be so funny.
All right. So we had Halloween this week.
Yeah.
Did you have you said you got a 14-year-old? She's like cusping on probably doesn't want you around during Halloween, right?
Oh yeah. So she was Napoleon Dynamite. So, and then all her friends were like different people from the movie. And then my son is the best. He's 12, right? So they always do like a group thing, like his class. And it's like 8 of them that are their buddies, these are the guys that like, you remember your buddies back from, so this is that group, right? So last year, one guy was a bottle of ketchup and they were all hot dogs, right? This year, they were all gorillas and one guy was a banana and they had a plan. So this is how they were trick-or-treating. They send the banana up front, one house ahead, and then when they got to the door, rang the bell, and somebody opened the door. There's 8 gorillas standing there. Go, you seen a banana? Have you seen a banana?
So wait. The banana kid is just alone all night?
Oh, he's alone all night, going from house to house, and then the 8 gorillas are right behind him.
So wait, I've seen the family costumes before. How do you even coordinate like 8 kids? Like,
I don't know, man. It was insanity. It was insanity this year, but it was so good. My wife is in charge of all the coordination stuff, so
So I got a bunch of kids. The youngest is still in costume, 10, and like he had a costume failure last minute, had to do something like just to get out the door. The other kids are like, oh, we don't believe in Halloween, but they all snuck out anyway. Anyway, so we've got Joe Rojas today here, and welcome back everyone to MSP Cyber Roundtable.
That was good. I was just like hanging out with you.
So welcome, Joe, everyone. Joe, I just got to say something really great about you before I sort of let you take it away today, which is that we work with a bunch of coaches in various things because, we're there and we're leading and helping people build their cybersecurity practices, but we're really just in the cyber software space. So we need a lot of people to support in marketing and sales development to really grow that MSP maturity. But what I really love about what you guys do is the opinionated framework with the tool sets. It's not just like watch this lecture and pay some money. It's like, here's a bunch of tools. Here's a kit to do this thing. Oh, you've solved that thing. Let's work on the next thing. Here's another kit. And I like, it's just really tactile. So everyone should know that about you. But also you're fun. So that's the stuff I got to say about Joe and Start Grow Manage the shop over there. And today's a little bit different because normally we'd jump in and do a lecture and we do topic of the day, but Joe had such great content that we're actually going to fill the hour with a lot of that. Before we get lost in that content, which is really great stuff. Do you want to just talk a little bit about how you arrived at Start Grow Manage? Just like a quick primer here.
Sure, but before I even do that, I just want to say, I watched your episodes and I really love your love of the community and your give back and your like you're all in, man. And so that's what I really like about you and Fort Mesa and what you're up to is that you really give a you really care. And so thank you for that, because the community needs that, right? How did I get to start Grow Manage? So I started opened my first business when I was 17. Had 25 bouncers working for me.
That sounds familiar. That's a whole nother story, but
that's a
keep
story
going.
for another day. And then when I turned 18, I decided that I wanted to, um, learn something. So I had stopped going to school. So I got my GED and I went into the Army. And I got all my technical training in the Army. And then after I did 2 years in the Army, regular Army, I applied for a job at the Department of Defense. I went to National Guard. I worked for the DoD for 4 years, learned a lot of crazy tech stuff, took that and got poached by a biomedical engineering company, did that. Then I got poached by an IT company, did that for a year. It was like a national MSP at the time in 1990, whatever it was. And then after I did that in 99, I opened my first MSP. And I was like a real MSP. I had like a Linux server with VNC installed everywhere.
This is before we had toolkits that like did all the jobs, right?
Yeah, so I did site-to-site VPN to all my clients with VNC installed everywhere, with rsync for remote backup back to my office. And and it was awesome, right? And so then we went through that, and then it took me a while to figure out how to run my business and grow it. And a few years later, I figured it out. I pulled my head out of my butt, learned how to run a business, sold it, started again, sold it, started again, sold it, and then kind of grew bigger to like, a few million. And then when I took my last exit, a friend of mine who was also an MSP said, "Hey, you should be a coach." And so I tried that for everybody for a while, and that sucked. And then in 2021, after meeting two extraordinary humans, my two partners, Heather Mathis and Jeff Lair, we decided to do it for just MSPs in 2021. And so since then, we started Start Grow Manage and have been focused around the MSP and the MSP space, everything from how you onboard clients, how do you do this, how do you do that, how do you market, and all around our vision is to be the number one educational resource for MSPs, right? So
I think your vision's bigger than that, because when I saw some of the kits that you guys have, I was like, oh, this isn't just the theory and teaching you how to do, like, this is like actually like some of the stuff that you needed to create, like plug in your logo here and you can run, right? Now that you know how this thing works. And
we have everything from MSAs, SLAs to these are the 200-step onboarding administrative process. And here are all the emails that you need to send a customer. And here are the agendas for all the meetings and the SOPs and all that. So all of that stuff, we've been creating all that for the last 3 years. And it's been awesome. And it's only going to get better, I think.
Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
Other people might not think this sounds fun. I think that sounds fun. Because I know a lot of our providers actually are like, oh man, I just gotta like spend like 5 hours creating a whatever so that I can use it, and I just want to use it. But it is great to create all that value and know that it's going to make a big impact. So you've got 3 secrets, but I think you might actually have more than 3 secrets to share here. But should we jump in?
Let's jump into my goofy picture. Good.
There it is.
There it is. Good. So we're going to kick it off, right? And like I said before, really passionate about what we do. And our idea is, that to be the number one educational resource for MSPs on planet Earth, right? So buckle up, put on your seatbelts, and get your notepads out and let's chat. Most MSPs are started by technical people, like like my MSP was started by me. I was a technical guy, right? And probably yours, if you're an MSP, that's how you got started. And you go out, you get your first few clients, and things are looking great, and kind of this is how it looks, right? And you think, hey, this is the dream. This is where I'm headed, and that's what we're all bought into, and we get excited about it, and we start celebrating. Yeah, I got my first client. What? Let's go, right? And then reality hits you, and you get stuck in that, that place where you either your first client leaves you, or you find another client, and then they kind of take over and they screw everything up because they're sucking up all your time and you can't service the clients that you have, or you end up in this roller coaster of good and bad months and good and bad days, and you know what that's like, Matt. It's like you're in that sauce, right?
I do know what that's like.
And you feel stuck, and like no matter what move you make, it feels like something's going to fall apart. One of your people calls out in the middle of an onboarding. You're terrified that the 3 quotes that just went out all say yes at the same time. You're like, ah, right? And you end up feeling like you're, stuck in the Sisyphean task of rolling that boulder up the hill the next day and the next day and the next day. And you feel like you're grinding and grinding and grinding, and all your customers are constantly calling you, and you feel like a bit like, it's overwhelming. They always want more, and they always want to pay less. And the issues keep coming up, and honestly, you wish that you could be any place else doing something else, right? But you got to grind. You got to make it work. In the back of your mind, there's this vision of what you want to create. And I'll tell you, I've been there. I felt that pain. But you know what? I eventually found a solution, and I grew and sold 3 MSPs, and so can you. I know the challenges of running that MSP while, managing what you already have. And we've helped dozens of clients implement a strategy to help them grow. And today we're going to share some of those strategies, right? And so we did an MSP industry survey, and what your peers said is that these are their top 3 concerns. Number 1 was client acquisition. Number 2 was work-life balance. Number 3 was more demanding customers. Like no matter what, they just want more, and they just want more, and they just want more. And that's what's keeping them up at night and keeping them from going to Tahiti. And I like Tahiti, right? So basically, you need more sales. You need them more easily. You don't want to drown in the sea of customer demands, even though you want more, and they want more, and they want a more tailored approach. So let's talk about what you need to do to get there. There are 3 secrets that you need to get right that people seem to miss all the time, right? Now I'm going to tell you what the 3 secrets are right out of the gate. These are the 3 secrets, right? Creating an unassailable competitive advantage, right? You can be competing with everyone, and we'll talk about how you do that. Doing the right work, and we'll talk about how you do that. And speaking their language. So now that I told you the 3 secrets, I'm going to show you how you can use each one. So we'll start with the first one, right? Creating that unassailable competitive advantage. If you want to jump in anytime, please do so. Right?
Well, I gotta say, we've done an entire episode on this, on finding your niche, and it's worth spending at least an hour in figuring out what that is. But it's important, right? To figure out.
Dude, it is.
That's how you create the advantage, right? You're better than the next guy at something, right?
At anything. So we're good. So we're going to talk about that, right? So here's what you need to know. It's no longer enough to be a technology expert. My partner Jeff tells a story all the time. In the 90s, he was running the precursor to an MSP, like a break fix, and he was making money hand over fist, and all he was doing was putting in network cards. Really, that was the whole the whole business, was putting in network cards and getting the network to getting the things to talk to each other. So back then, just knowing technology was enough. because nobody understood it and it was hard. And we all remember those days. But today, they get their computer, they turn it on, they put in their password, their Wi-Fi password, they log into Salesforce or whatever SaaS platform they're in, away they go. Shoot, what the heck do they really need us for, right? Well, there's plenty that they need us for. But we have to think about how we deliver what we deliver differently. And the good news is that there is a more powerful and more rewarding way to deliver our services. In fact, the fact of the matter is that there's a shift happening in the MSP space. We call it from MSP to BSP, right?
I haven't heard that one before. I hate the MSP label, by the way.
Yeah, so we call it from MSP to BSP, which is business solutions provider, right? Or business technology solutions provider. And so that it's about transforming our business to be more about the problem that we solve, right? It's no longer enough to be a tech expert. Normally, when we start an MSP, we go out and we convince people to buy. We become technology dealers. We're like, hey man, you want some IT? I got IT, man. Come on. You want to buy some? However, that's not what they want. What they want is to run their business. So you have to discover the strategy that's going to give you an unassailable competitive advantage. So you don't have to do IT and find people to buy it. So we like this model from David Collis and Michael Ruckstadt. You can read about it if you have an HBR subscription. Highly recommend it. Can you say what your strategy is, right? And when you look at your customer needs and your capabilities and your competitive offering, your sweet spot is right there, right? And what you offer that your competitor doesn't offer, right? Where it intersects. And the problem is that as technology has become more and more commoditized, where being technically smart is just not enough, it's become harder and harder to differentiate the capabilities because everybody, and I mean everybody, is competing for that little sliver right there, right? It just keeps getting smaller and smaller. So doing the same thing, right? So that competitive advantage you had shrinks, and all you're left with, it's just that little slip. And it leads to more competition, a race to the bottom on price and unmet customer needs and upset. And remember this guy? Leads to that, right? So
that's how I ended up in security, Joe. Which was to make that slip bigger.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So how do you know you're here? How do you know you're in this spot? Right? How do you know you're caught in that trap? Well, when somebody asks you who your ideal customer is, and your answer is everybody, then you know you're in that trap, right? And there's the clever one, anybody who's charcoal clear, right? And then there's the pretending I have a focus one. I really like this one because you really think that it's like, oh yeah, this guy's a specialist, which is SMBs. Yeah, I work with SMBs. That's 93% of the market. Or I like also professional services. That's 56% of the market, right? And my absolute favorite, we're agnostic. I love that one, right? But if you Google it, if you Google agnostic MSP, you're going to see that agnostic is where MSPs go to die, right? Just ask Google. It'll tell you, right? So, because the problem is all you sell is tech, right? And it's tech. And the tech is the same as everybody else's. And everybody's talking tech, and nobody can stand out. So the opportunity here is instead of focusing on that sliver of competitive advantage and doing the same thing that everybody else is doing and being a technical expert, instead, right, work on getting to know your client and grow your competitive advantage. That's what these guys did, right? These guys sell PBX. Everybody knows how hard it is to sell PBX, right? They sell VoIP. And if you ever tried to sell VoIP, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's hard. There are millions of people out there, VoIP. So they focus on hotels. And they asked general managers, what is annoying you? And all of their, and what general managers said is, in all of our operations meetings, are being dominated by PBX and phones, and it gives us no time to work on customer service or customer experience. So they went to work on their unassailable competitive advantage. And they ended up really understanding why the phones kept coming up in meetings and creating a process to avoid that, right? And so as they created the process to avoid that, their unassailable competitive advantage is helping hotel managers, right, take the phones out of their operations meeting. How? But 10-minute SLAs, increasing the high touch support so that it never comes up. These guys are on it. When something is wrong, they know before you know, right? And so when you cater to your ideal client, right, you don't have to change the technology that you're doing. What you have to focus is the business problem that you're solving for them. That's a key, solving relevant business problems for your ideal client, right? So you create an unassailable competitive advantage by understanding your target customer. That's what you have to do. You have to understand what is the problem that they have. These guys had a simple problem. We don't want it to come up in the meetings. Great. All we have to do is make sure it doesn't. Right? So they focused on that, increased the size of the team, did what they needed to do to be able to focus on that. And now he's got a different problem. His problem now is he can't keep up with his pipeline. He has more in the pipeline than the size of the company right now.
That's a good problem.
That is a great problem to have. So now let's move on to the next thing, right? Doing the right work. So like I said before, there's this idea that we do IT and find people to buy. We do IT and find people to buy. And it looks something like this. We do stuff and we find buyers, which is backward. And I want to show you why. One of my favorite examples is car manufacturing at the turn of the 20th century, right? The cars were made by hand and individually, and it was hard, a grind. And the problem was a lot of work, right? And what this led to was some major issues. Issues like, the work, that's lots of work that's always changing. And it requires highly skilled people who are hard to work with because they have their own ways of doing things, right? And it also requires micromanagement of every stage of the process, and it's nearly impossible to scale. And as a result, you have limited earning capacity. Does it sound familiar? Right? So these guys had that problem, right? They found themselves in that situation. They had a few clients, but lots of work, lots of turnover, endless headaches, no money. So we had them turn the equation around, right? And took a different way of delivering services. So instead of doing stuff and finding buyers, you actually flip it around, right? And find buyers and solve their problems. And by this, I don't mean that you go around and sell like crazy and figure out how to solve what you sold. I don't mean that. What I mean is you find a group of people, of buyers that have a problem. You solve the problem. And then you say to those people, hey, I'm going to solve your problem. And you sell to that group. See, you solve the problem before you have a sales conversation. Then you can say, hey, if you're part of this group and you have this problem, I have a solution for you. And this will be by far your best and easiest sales conversation ever, right? So you talk to people who have the problem that you solve. And this is what Ford did, right? Any customer can have a car painted any color that they want, as long as it's a black Model T. He wasn't a big innovator. What he knew was how to create a factory that he could deliver the same car over and over again, a repeatable model that brought down the price and allowed him to take over the market. So what you need to grow effectively to hit that first million or that next million in annual recurring revenue, right, is repeatable models in a standard way of delivery. Why? Right? Because it makes selling easier. It also makes delivering easier, and you're doing the same thing over and over again, right? And then you just repeat it, then you write it down, and then you know exactly what you're doing. And as a result of that, you can actually get to Tahiti faster. And that's exactly what these guys did, right? They started at less than $1 million in annual recurring revenue. They grew to over 3 million. They're actually over 4 now since I put this deck together. And plus, a couple of million in project work. They've developed over 5,000 SOPs. And I'm not suggesting that you do this in a year, right? They've been doing this for a while now. It's been about 3-4 years with them. But they have a 93% reduction in trailing tickets, and they've increased staff retention to about 91%. Most of their team has been with them for about 5 years plus now, right? And they love the culture. So, the same thing is happening in the MSP market that happened in the automotive market, right? In automotive manufacturing, the same thing that happened in the computer industry in the early 2000s that happens throughout history is happening today in the MSP market. And the thing is, you have to get really good at solving business problems repeatedly and effectively. So you have to do the right work by solving their problem repeatedly. When you do that, they find you. You don't have to find them. They find you. So now let's talk about how you talk to them, right? And this one was really hard for me, right? Because your customers don't care about technology. That's why they're hiring you. They want something else. The problem is, at least it was for me, that I love tech so much. I love tech. So, Jeff, my partner, he's a business guy, but I'm the tech guy. So tech is my thing. What I soon discovered is that speaking technobabble does not make me sound smarter. It just confuses the crap out of my prospects. So the bottom line is your work has to be relevant to your customer, right? It has to be relevant to them. What I find is everybody's out there blasting, we do IT through a bullhorn, and nobody's listening because what they really care about is, how do I get back to work? How do I make this noise stop? How do I make this guy stop shouting at me? That was my life. Me and my bullhorn yelling at people, we do IT. I was stuck with no money, tired, frustrating, sitting in front of a pile of unpaid bills that made me angry. I thought, I'm a smart guy. I know tech. Why can't I figure this out? I had no freaking idea what to do. I was so pissed until someone told me to focus and to specialize. And I did. And I focused my entire practice on personal injury lawyers. And I added $1 million of ARR in just over a year, right? I didn't know much about PI lawyers when I started, but I knew they needed help with a software at the time called Saga. And I learned Saga. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, right? And when I could say I know Saga, I was no longer shouting into a bullhorn. Now I was sitting with someone telling them, hey, I understand what your Saga problems are, and I could make it easy for you to use it, right? And they would say to me, where have you been all my life? Right? Where have you been all my life? Please solve my problems. I don't care what it costs. And then I started making money, right? Because then I could charge what I wanted to charge. I actually got the command of price. And that's what happened with these guys, right? These guys, they couldn't keep up with customer demands until they focused on dentists. And one of the big issues that they found with dentists wasn't even so technical. It wasn't their the x-ray cables for the x-ray machine kept breaking, right? The technical stuff came later for them. But one thing they had that others didn't have is that they asked dentists, what's really annoying you? And they said, well, our cables keep breaking, right? And the conversation went from we do IT to we can fix your broken cables and keep them from breaking in the future so your operatory is always up, right? And what this leads to is a much deeper conversation. because the dentist, the one running the office at the end of the day, he would give anything for that to end, because that's where his pain is, right? His pain is not in IT. His pain is in, I can't see patients. Being able to serve their patients effectively, that's what they need. So doesn't mean that you have to become like an expert in dentistry. You just have to become an expert in solving their problem, right? So you start, it's kind of the recipe that we use. You start with the problem, right? And then you move from there to accentuating that problem and really talking about what happens if you don't address these cables, your operatories down all the time, right? And then you explain your solution, but you don't explain it like you do it. You do it in third person. You know, the solution to that problem is you got to do X, Y, Z. And now you're still sitting on the same side of the table with them, explaining to them what the solution to the problem is. You haven't even said, I'm going to work with you. I'm just like, here's a problem. You accentuate the problem. Here's a solution. And then you talk about what it looks like after it's fixed. Your operatory is never down. It's always working. You can see your patients all the time. And then you make your amazing offer, right? And this framework, which we call PASTA, right, helps you think about how you do that, right? How do you make that amazing offer? And I'll tell you, as someone who talks to hundreds of MSPs, what I see is that MSPs start talking about the solution without getting a nod on the problem first. They just attack the solution like right away. Like, this is how you fix the problem. Well, you don't even know what problem I have. You have to make sure that they have the problem that you solve first, right? And so then they don't accentuate it. And because of that, the prospect is not interested in the solution and it falls flat. When you use this prescriptive method of sales, the beauty is you go from this guy, the slimy car salesman, to this person here that is prescribing a solution to a problem that I have. And I forgot to tell you, Matt, I hope the sound is enabled, but here's one of our clients talking about it.
I had a sales conversation yesterday, and I employed all of this. You know, in the way that I've written down my sales conversation. It was the easiest sale I ever had. By the time I was finished, she said, okay, let's do it. And
that's our experience.
Right? And you have to speak their language. That's how you do it, right? So there you have it, the 3 secrets. You create an unassailable advantage, competitive advantage by understanding your ideal customers, right? That gets you out of that competitive sliver. Then you do the right work by solving their problems. Then you speak their language by talking about their problem and their transformation that you offer. But it gets better because all your peers out there that are talking about competition during our study, that, you know, we heard it's so hard. There's so many MSPs. We're getting crushed on price. Well, here's the good news, right? When we interviewed the MSPs, what we found is that out of all of them, about 30% of them claim specialization, but it's really more like 10% that are really specialized. If you really dig deep, you see that the things that they claim is not really a specialization. SMB is not a specialization, right? So if you look at this, roughly 40,000 MSPs in the US. So if 30% say they're specialized, but it's really 10, you're left competing with 4,000 other MSPs nationally, right? So it's actually much less because nobody's going to be in your specialty. And so here's another aspect or another way of looking at it, right? For $1 million in ARR, you need about 40 customers at $2,000 a month or 20 customers at $4,000 a month, right? So PI lawyers alone, 50,000 in the US, 2,000 in New York, right? Fitness studios, 115,000 in the US, 2,200 in New York. Dentists, 202,000 in the US. But get this, in Duluth, I'm sorry, in Minnesota, there's 4140. In Duluth, there's 172 of them. So if you specialize wherever you are, and all you need is 40 clients to do $1 million a year, I don't care if you're in Duluth, man, you can find 40 clients out of 172 dentists, right? The choice is yours. See, you can be, option one, which is you out of 40,000 with nothing to set you apart but a bullhorn. Or you could be option two, one of a few hundred, clearly differentiated, commanding price. The question is, which one would you rather be? You know what the problem is, Matt? You know what the question I get all the time?
Well, so first of all, if we rewind a moment, I think your math might be a little high because when I interview partners, I find less specialization than that.
Yeah,
So I think you were generous.
I was a little generous, but it's less than 10%. But I didn't want to be brutal about it. I figured, I'll be nice.
So I think people have heard this thing. You should specialize, right? But people feel like they're trapped in their old clients. They feel like they're trapped, that like they don't know what to pick. Like, this is what I hear all the time. They're like,
look.
All right, here we go.
That's the number one question that I get. So why don't more people specialize, right? And so, here's the two reasons that I hear, right? One is I can work with anybody, right? I don't want to limit my market. So that's the number one reason. But here's the thing. Your customers, your prospects don't care if you can work with anybody. What they care about is that you can solve a problem for them. They want to know that you understand their needs because they don't see themselves as everybody. Just like when you're buying, you want to know that your solution is tailored for MSPs, not just plain services for everybody else, right? So in terms of that, sorry. And the other one is I don't want to limit my market, right? The truth is, the narrower your focus is, the broader your market is. So if you have to water down your story to appeal to everybody, you appeal to nobody, and you end up in the same technical focus as everybody else. So what's the real reason that MSPs don't want to focus? Is because they're afraid. Because when you specialize, you feel like your ass is on the line. You feel like, I'm not an SME. Why should I? I'm not a subject matter expert on FINRA compliance. Well, you may not be when you start. And so you feel like it's easier for someone to evaluate your work when you say, or to say whether you do things right or wrong when you're a specialist. But the truth of the matter is you're always delivering specialties. Everybody in the world is always delivering specialties. See, you can say you're agnostic, but the truth of the matter is that the person that's buying your service, the lawyer, the ophthalmologist, the dentist, the architect, they're going to evaluate you according to their lens, no matter what you do. So whether you agree or not, you're a specialist to them. So if you're not delivering and you don't know what they need, and you're always going to be wrong, you're always going to be struggling, you're always going to be trying to keep up with customer demands, and that puts you on the back foot. Always, right? What we're saying is, instead of doing it that way, just get to know them. Get to know something about them, study, so that you can deliver something special to them. Focus on one of them. And when I say this, I really mean one type of client, right? So that you don't end up in a constant sea of unmet needs, because everybody's different. And people coming up to you with things that you don't know and you don't understand and you have to keep figuring out, it's just going to slow you down, right? Here's the thing. If you specialize, it's not hard. You don't have to start out with deep knowledge of the vertical. You don't have to even give up the clients that you currently have. Like, you don't have to give them up, right? You can, in fact, do it. You just need the tools so that you can do it.
Right? So I want to ask you about something. You just said this thing. You don't have to give up your current clients. So I talk with a lot of partners, and I talk about specialization a little bit. And a lot of times what I hear is, oh, yeah, I've been thinking of specializing. I've got this group of clients, though. I know I want to specialize next year, but this year I'm just trying to make this work with these clients first. And it seems like it seems like a lot of people are sort of signed up with the idea that they understand that specialization is a good thing.
Yeah.
But there's something sitting in front of them, like they think they have to. They think they have to fire all their clients. You just said like
But
that's
you
one
don't.
thing, or they
have to
think
fire
they
your,
have to stop doing X, Y, or Z, or
you don't. What you have to do is you have to specialize, change your website, do all this stuff for the clients that you want to do it. The fear that they have is that the second they do that, all their clients are going to run away. That's not going to happen. We've done this hundreds of times. It has not happened a single time, right? The next thing you have to do is you have to do a price increase. The next thing that you have to do is you have to define what your process is going to be like. And the next thing that you have to do if you want to make more money with your existing clients is do SBRs with all of them, strategic business reviews. Stop doing TBRs and QBRs and technical stuff and understand their business so that you can deliver a little bit more custom services to the clients that you do have, even if they're across the board. Right. And so to do that, what you need to do is you really need to see what your business process is. What is the business? What are your processes? What's your factory? What's standing in the way of you getting out of your own way? Right. How do you train your people? What do you measure? And when you get stuck, what do you have to invent? You know, when you do that. So I was going to talk about the opportunity assessment, but I think really just come have a coaching session with me. If you come have a coaching session with me, I can talk to you about it. But I think we should stop there, Matt. Right? So you can stop the or leave the link.
well,
right. But let's chat
I,
now that you heard the whole story. Let's chat. Let me close this thing because I'm getting light in my phone.
Well, I'm already like my head's spinning. Like, oh, I want to know what's in. But like the reality is like that wheel you just brought up, right? Really just breaks down like there's whole dimensions of focus there, right? That each require you to sit down and solve for, right? And I'm already thinking, oh, I'm not even an MSP anymore, and I want to go solve those MSP problems. But
yeah.
But I do remember what that was like, and I do know what it's like when I'm talking with my partners who are fighting this very thing. And you're right; they don't leave you. In fact, I remember what it's like when you tell that client, I don't usually do this anymore, but for you, Joe, I really like you, Joe. Don't worry about what it says on my website, right? I'm gonna take care of you. Like no one's gonna leave you, right? If you're taking
nobody leaves you. Nobody leaves you. Because when you take on this process, what happens is your delivery gets better, your processes get better, you become a better MSP as a function of it. So nobody wants to go anywhere. In fact, what we find is at the end of the 6th or 7th month of working with us, you could do a 70% price increase and nobody goes anywhere. People don't leave. Like you'll lose 1 or 2 clients and everybody else is like, yeah, okay, whatever, works. Right? Why? Because you've improved your service delivery so that you can improve it across the board. See, when you improve your service delivery to service one client, it improves the service delivery for everybody you're servicing at the same time. The difference is that now you're focused and you understand the problem you solve. And when you can walk in to a prospect and say, oh, this is the problem that you have, and you probably are experiencing this, and they go, oh my God, how do you know that? Or when let's say you're serving CPAs and you hire a CPE trainer to come in 3 times a year and do a CPE lunch and learn, right? That they have to, by requirement, by law, get their CPEs every year, right? Now you're offering it for free to your customers. They're going to invite other CPAs to come. It's like, hey, you want to come get some free CPE training? Like my MSP does this. What do you think is going to happen? Their MSP is not doing it, but you only serve accountants. So you're going to feed them and then you're going to talk about yourself. What do you think is going to happen?
Now you're talking about verticals, but there's other ways of cutting this, right? Around what are the other ways you can focus?
Well, you could cut around a compliance framework, right? You could cut around geography, although I'm not a big fan. I like cutting around a compliance framework that applies to multiple industries, right? I like but I really like cutting across verticals. And I really like not just like the top layer of the vertical, not lawyers, but, trust and estates lawyers only. Like that.
So when you do the vertical direction, then that opens the door to those professional services that are highly differentiated, right? So unless you truly are in a unique geography, right, it's hard to really raise the bar unless you're like you're in
Well, I have an
Alaska or
MSP. I have
something.
an MSP that's in Montana, right?
Yeah, that's
So,
that's a good example.
so he's in Montana. So we started off with just schools, right? And we've been doing schools, and we're doing really well in that vertical. But he's running out of. There's no more schools. He's going to have them all.
But he has a real, probably depending on where he is in Montana, he's
Yeah.
probably got a real barrier there that he can take advantage of, right?
Yes. And so he's going to take advantage of that real barrier, and then he's going to pick the next vertical and go and get everything in that one. Then eventually he'll become the best MSP in Montana. Right? So that's, unless you're in a challenging geography like that. But if you're in a major city, I don't care what you pick, man. I have a guy in Puerto Rico. He picked gastroenterologists. There were like 300 in his zip code.
It's getting harder now, but I remember when people used to specialize on things like Macs, like I do Macs, right?
Yeah.
And that you'd end up with a lot of creatives and stuff like that. But the reality was that it was sort of a specialist technology.
So I have a client that specializes on Macs, and he has two offerings. Okay. One direct to consumer and one to MSPs.
Really?
If you're an MSP and you don't want to manage your Macs, you don't want to deal with the Macs, you call him. He does everything white glove for you. He does the whole thing. You don't have to touch it. Right? But he only works with PR agencies. Like on his direct, he only works with PR agencies. And what he's a specialist in is digital asset management for PR agencies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's a whole differentiator, because he can be a specialist for digital asset management on the PR side. But then he has this other offering that's just for MSPs that is like, hey, you don't want to deal with these Macs? We'll take care of it. We'll onboard it. We'll service it for you. We'll patch it. We'll update it. You don't have to deal with it. And those are, you can do that. I was okay with those two avatars for him, those two ICPs.
And this technical thing naturally happens in SLED too, right? Because you end up with all those Chrome OS devices that like a lot of MSPs have exposure to Chrome OS and K-12, but if you're really specialized in that space, you're really going to be able to meet all of those regulatory requirements, right? And actually, I would say that the regulatory requirements in education, or any SLED business, right, are bigger drivers than the business application side. Like the MSP is really not getting dragged into the student information system, but what they are getting dragged into is, how do we make sure that the kids are safe on the internet? How do we make sure we comply with federal this?
Well, they have HIPAA that. Also, because they all have that too. Nurses, and so they all have HIPAA compliance as well. So it's all of it, right? So you have to know what the compliance frameworks are. But if you're if you're doing K through 12, you have to know, Active Inspire and Google Classroom and all the other components that are there. That, and if you're doing K through 12, you have a unique opportunity in 10, 11, and 12th grade to do a training program for A+ certification that gives you a factory of technicians.
And I gotta give CompTIA a shout out right now, because they've got a bunch of new stuff actually this year for that market segment. So I'm getting excited about their little A's. I don't know if you've seen them, but
that's awesome. Yeah, we just had Justin out at an event that we had, and we talked a little bit about that, and it's just so good. It's so good. So I think that's a great opportunity in that space as well. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking of the specialist examples in my partner network. I have a partner that's new to me. I was so excited when he told me his story in like the first interaction, and he is like, I only do SLED, and then I start asking him about, which is state municipal, local government education,
Yeah.
and then I find out actually no, he doesn't actually do SLED. He does specifically municipal governments of a certain size in a single state.
That's awesome.
And so they all have an EMS, they all have a little police department, they've all got the highway guys, they've all got like the town meetings, they've all got a building with like a couple remote offices. Like they all basically look exactly the same, and they're all under the same state regulations and funding sources. And this is the kicker, they're all in the same budget cycle.
Isn't it great?
He's got all the budgetary like milestones on his calendar, right? And he's oriented his whole business around that. And I was thinking, wow, this is dreamy. I wish all of my other partners could hear this story.
Yeah. So you know what what's his next step now? What do you think is his next step?
He's working with me on how to develop the to get his municipal buyers, as city managers, right?
Yeah.
More educated in investments in cyber, but I'm sure there's other things he's working on.
Well, his next step is really getting himself fully replaced in his business himself.
Oh yeah.
So he's completely out. So he could go to the neighboring state and build another team.
I'm going to tell him you said that, Joe. I'm going to send him your way too.
Because if he goes to the neighboring state and he builds another team, he doesn't use his team to leverage, because his team is an expert in what they're doing. So he just needs to SOP the crap out of what he does, and then bring in an ops manager or hire a CEO and let that business, work with that person 6, 8, 10 months until they're fully functional on their own. And he needs to step out for a month, see what it looks like. And when he's out for a month and it's cruising, he goes to another state, he takes some money, he hires a new couple of guys, and he starts over again in the next state. And he builds that thing out, because the compliance frameworks are going to be different. The budget cycles are going to be different. This is going to be different. But he just does it in the adjacent state until he's got his full team fully developed. And then what does he do?
Well, that's the exit point, right? I mean,
well, he either exit or he does it again.
Yeah.
And then he does it again.
Keep doing that.
Takes 4 states, and he does that, and then he can just go sit at the beach, and he has 4 CEOs cranking away. And because that's the goal, man. What's the point of working so hard forever? Like, you want to work hard, yes. I'm a big proponent of working hard. Been working my whole life. But you also want to do that thing, man.
Well, Joe, you've been giving us all great advice. You introduced at the top of the hour, but talk us a little bit about who's the right coaching client for you, and what's that experience like? Like, where do they start? Who do you say yes and no to? Like, who's right for Joe? And start Grow Manage.
Well, if you're not willing to narrow down to an avatar, we're not for you. I wish we were, but we're just not. Right? If you're willing to narrow down to an avatar to an ideal client profile, right? And that can be, in special circumstances, a geography. But you have to be willing to narrow down. Like, I like that SLED, right? Like, that's perfect. Like, it's really clear the problem that he solves. So you have to be, and you're in one of 3 places when you come work with us. You're either in start, grow, or manage. So I'll give you the numbers first, and I'll give you the problems, right? If you're in start, the problems that you're having in start is you're either pre-revenue or you're from $0 to $500,000, right? And there's a set of problems that comes with that. If you're in grow, you're in 500 to, and hold on, because I don't want to get this wrong. Let me just pull this up. You're in 500 to about 2.5, 3 million if you're in grow. And if you're in manage, you're usually over 3 million, right? And if you're in start, what you're what you're thinking about is what you have to work on is customer needs integration, product and pricing, and sales. That's what you have to work on and start. If you're in grow, you have to work on predictable marketing, documentation, and how do you build a team. If you're in manage, you have to work on management systems, measurement systems, and automation, right? Which is where your guy is. Like that's where he's got to start thinking about right now. He's got to start thinking about management systems, measurement systems, and how does he automate the crap out of it so he can get out of it. And so that's really, those are the people that should come work with us. You want to grow your MSP, you're in one of those three places, and you want it, and you've been wanting it, and you're just stuck. Come and get unstuck, right? Come and get unstuck. And I'll talk to anybody. So that's why, they can go to stargrowmanage.com.
Well, and there are other coaches out there, and you know who they are. So you can always send someone in the right direction.
Exactly.
So, Joe, thanks for coming today. I'm hoping we can have you back. But next week,
awesome.
Next week we're actually taking we're doing something. Not that we never do these, but we're doing something a little bit different. We're doing we're doing a rehash just on cyber insurance from 23-24. We've had a bunch of people from the I consider it the risk transfer industry, the insurance industry over the last year. We want to bring those threads together. So that's happening next week. And so I hope you all will return then. Joe, you got anything you want to leave people with before we take it out of here?
Well, I always want to leave you with, remember that you are loved, right? Like I always want to leave you with that.
People need that on a Friday. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. It was really great today.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.